Welcome, everyone. Good morning. We're here today to talk about sustainability, in particular food sustainability, and we have three people with us on the panel today who have made it their mission to build a healthy food system, starting with sustainable agriculture, ending with the food that we put on our table. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to start with Paul, who is the director of the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. And tell us a little bit about sustainability. What is it? There are a lot of misconceptions out there and misinformation. What is sustainability and what is food sustainability?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think when we think about, firstly, I might start with food. Food is something that connects all of us. I would imagine that most people watching have had something to eat in the last day. Some of us have one meal, some of us have 6 meals, small meals, you know, depending on the culture, the space you're in, your day, food is a part of that. And it connects to the place that you're in, but also the culture, the part of the world, the energy, all kinds of elements in your day. And so food is something that connects us, and I think is critical then to the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has, and it connects to all 17 goals in different ways. And so when we think about sustainability, we're thinking about how do we ensure that what we have today is available in the future. And I think, you know, we're almost moving into a time of regeneration as well. So going beyond just sustainable, but going further, and to look at how the actions that we take also have a positive impact, not just a neutral impact. They go beyond. So when we're talking about that, it's thinking about the food actually bringing carbon back. It's some of the challenges of where we've gone over that we're now fixing or regenerating the spaces that we're in. And I think this is the case with food. And when we think about it, food is something that really connects some of the big challenges we face. We all know COVID, climate challenges have been massive for the planet and critical for us to get there. And food is at the heart, I suppose. It brings together the climate challenge of our planet and also the health challenges of people. And I think this is really important.
Okay, I'm going to move to you. You've been very active in the World Central Kitchen. Can you tell us a little bit about it and how it has impacted people?
Yeah, well, I'm Chef Grace Ramirez. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here today with you all and with this amazing panelists, which are also my friends, which is pretty cool. You know, World Central Kitchen it's a nonprofit organization founded by Chef Jose Andres, and we're a chef relief team primarily, but with COVID, so yes, I've gone to the Bahamas with them when Dorian hit, to Puerto Rico when Maria hit, and Venezuela with the border crisis, and most recently in New York, the pandemic was hit. The city was hit really, really, really hard by the pandemic. So at the height of it, we were supervising 100,000 meals a day that would go to frontline workers and the community in need. But the way we decided to go in and help, which was different from a disaster zone, right? It was we needed to rethink the city, divide it up and kind of conquer, right? Because not only was people in need, the community was in need, frontline workers were in need, because if you think about it, all the hospitals, their cafeterias were shut down. There was no way to access food quickly for a lot of people, especially frontline workers. When I walked into a hospital, I realized, oh, their cafeteria is closed. How are they gonna, everything was closed. So the good thing about having a chef network like the Chef Manifesto and is that you can make one phone call and you have allies. And so I was one of the leads, along with Melissa, my colleague. We decided to divide the city and conquer. So save as many restaurants as they could from closing, but trying to keep them safely. And this was since day one. So it was kind of had two parts. How do we keep our staff safe with what we know? And how do we feed the community efficiently? And how do we have access to good, healthy meals for all these people?
And how easy was it?
very, very challenging,
Yes.
to say the least. But you know, we were big on thinking, and this is why I'm also so passionate about the Chef Manifesto. Like, how do we, in this crazy circumstances, have a good? Because most people are having one meal a day, but how do we make it healthy? How do we make it balanced? How do we, you know, also think about food waste, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a lot to think about. In terms of such a large operation. It was 100,000 meals a day for months, so it was 9.5 million meals later. But every day I kept constantly thinking about how do we have access to a good, healthy meal, reduce food waste, you know, really encourage the workers to be in a safe environment and get paid fairly, etc.
How different was it from dealing with people in disaster?
It was very, very different because everyone was scared. I think when you go into a disaster zone, well, it's, first of all, you kind of bring hope, right, to the community. It's like they just went through a massive disaster, and then we show up with pots and pans, and we just set up in the middle of anywhere. You know, I've cooked in football fields and in the middle of mountains and basketball fields, everywhere. And you just show up with pots and pans and a stove, and you turn it on, and the community kind of comes together, and it's a thing. Even though they went through this massive trauma, they're like, okay, it's time to rebuild. This was different. This was like COVID. We had everyone, you know, we started since day one of lockdown, so people were afraid. A lot of people didn't want to go to work. A lot of people needed to work, but at every moment you were kind of like, I don't know if I'm gonna get COVID, if I'm gonna get sick. So, and there was, even though we were bringing each person a meal, and that would give them hope for the next day, but it was very different because the beautiful thing about cooking in a disaster zone, as crazy as it is the resilience and the hope and the joy of going and cooking. This was kind of like, here we go again, you know, and what's going to happen, we have no idea. And in a place like New York, it was really, really, I've never seen the city like that. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'll ever see the city like that, but it felt apocalyptic. It was
I can imagine.
Surreal.
You mentioned the Chef's Manifesto, and Chef Arthur, you've been one of the founding members of the manifesto. Can you tell us a little bit about it and how much of a difference chefs have been able to make since its inception?
Hi everyone, I'm Chef Arthur Dawson, one of the senior chefs at the Chef's Manifesto, as well as the United Nations World Food Programme Advocacy chef. The Chef's Manifesto was born of an idea that was, how do we communicate sustainability within the kitchen? How do we get chefs to be able to communicate the Sustainable Development Goals? And Paul and I, along with a number of other chefs, sort of put our heads together in the earlier stages and say, well, how do we communicate? How do we narrate food from the SDG perspective through our kitchens? And so it's not so much about simplifying the SDGs, but it's about understanding the narrative that chefs use simply in their kitchens. So you can imagine all of the processes that chefs go through, from the relationship with the supplier, the logistics, distribution, how to write a menu, the costings, how they narrate the food to the guest, how the guest then consumes the food, and then how they waste the food. Hopefully, none of the food. And so it's a huge journey that food takes from the field through the plate and then back to the field. And so the Chef's Manifesto was able to pick up every part of that journey and say, okay, well, you know what? We deal with water, we deal with fish, we deal with meat, we deal with vegetables, we deal with the way food moves, how it's consumed, how nutritious it is, how much sugar, how much salt, how much fat. And so as the Chef's Manifesto was born and grew, chefs the world over started to say, oh, we can better understand the Sustainable Development Goals through the way that we serve our food. And so suddenly they picked up the Chef's Manifesto and said, I do this in my kitchen already. I have respect for Earth and its oceans. I have respect for ethics and for resilience, for water, for land. And it connects to what the Chef's Manifesto is saying, and it ratchets right the way up into the SDGs. And so suddenly you've got chefs who originally were just doing things because they thought it was a good idea. Oh, I don't want to, I turn my tap off, I turn off the light, I don't waste any energy. I buy food more locally, I buy food more fairly, I pay the right price for the food. It suddenly becomes a global unifying narrative. So chefs in India, Pakistan, South America, Venezuela, California, New York, Honduras, wherever you are on the planet, it's the same story. And so what's wonderful about the Chef's Manifesto is that chefs all over the planet are saying, hey, I'm a part of a movement that picks up the same story because it's about local, it's about seasonal, it's about fairness, it's about respecting the planet. And quite a lot of the chefs that we've been engaging with, you know, Grace and I and Connor and Evan and everyone who've been just in the Expo with the past few days, we're all telling the same story, but we're all from different parts of the planet. And that's what's really, you know, sort of bangs it home. It's like, look, we're human beings. We're trying to make a better world. And chefs have got a wonderful story. And we're standing on a platform of food, which tells everybody a wonderful story that we can make changes wherever we are.
So how, as the chef, how do you take this from the restaurant to the local communities? How do you teach people to eat healthy and consume good food? And what is good food?
Yeah, well, good food means a lot of different things, right? We can talk about that all day. But, you know, one of the things that good food, food must nourish you. Good food also shouldn't impact negatively on the planet. Food should also not borrow from the future. We should be looking at food now and saying, well, we need to use everything that we have. And any food that you throw away is taking from the future. So good food can't impact on the environment negatively. Good food must give you nutrition. Good food shouldn't lead to obesity epidemics or to tooth decay or to mental deprivation, to physical deprivation. And how you narrate that through your community is generally through your employees, through the people that come to your restaurant. But it's not so much about restaurants, because restaurants can be seen to be quite intimidating places.
Exactly.
And so chefs at the moment are in a unique position where it's not just about in a restaurant. A lot of chefs now are influencing schools. A lot of chefs are influencing workplaces. Particularly my role, I work as a mentor. I work with schools. I work in businesses. I work in restaurants, supermarkets. And so chefs have a unique position because food is in it. Well, if you're lucky, food is in everybody's life every day. And so chefs, when I first started cooking 35 years ago, a chef was behind the door. No one really wanted to know who they were. They just wanted to know the food was good. Now everybody wants to know what a chef wants to say. So it's a unique position that the chefs are in at the moment. And so a lot of people, like you say, you're connecting into communities in New York. I know that Chef Coco, I know that Chef Connor, I know that Chef Evan, that we're all connecting into communities because it comes through media, social media, comes through radio, TV. A very good friend of mine, Jamie Oliver, he works tirelessly with the youth, with people. And, you know, so chefs need to be saying the right things around sustainability ethics.
So you started from the kitchen of your restaurant and moved out into the community.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think that a lot of people in the food industry, or certainly from communities, have said, oh, chef, can you help us to understand food?
Yeah.
Because we don't. And understanding food is how do you put it on the plate? How do you cut beetroot? How do you peel an onion? Simple stuff. And I think chefs borrow from the past, from stories from their ancestors, from the culture and their community where they come from, and they use that to stand up on a platform and say, hey, we need to look back to be able to move forward. And chefs are uniquely placed to do that.
What inspired you to go into food and start from the base and try to educate people about food, good farming, proper farming techniques, because I know you're involved in that. How has food changed from when you started and how we are today?
So I think one of the things that often happens when you think about change, when you think about the impacts in the environment, is that we think about, it's almost like something that we have to miss out on. It's almost like a negative. And when you come to food, it can be a positive. And so what I suppose we've really thought about with food is something that people enjoy. It's something that you, if you ask somebody what their favorite food is, you almost see them smile.
Exactly.
They bring back memories. They think about childhood. And so as we think about food, and then we think about the changes that need to happen in the world around sustainable development, food is an amazing connector to help bring together some of those big issues and to ground them. So you can think about education. You think about education, you think about you can't really study without the right food. You can think about water. You know, you need to have water to be able to grow food. You need to be able to have the right water to be able to survive and thrive. You can think about gender. You can think about the fact that the majority of farmers in the world are women. You know, there's so many elements that come across the SDGs and that connect to food. But then also there's so much to joy that comes from food. There's so much conversation around the table. And so the Chef's Manifesto is a framework that came together to bring chefs to the table with the SDGs at the center, to have a conversation. And it's so exciting to be at Expo this week because we've been launching the Chef's Manifesto in Arabic, which will help to engage and bring together the Arabic-speaking world into this framework so that chefs can say, hey, we can do something on the SDGs from our kitchen. And I think this is the only way that we're going to get to 2030 and really get the progress that we need to deliver on the promises we made.
I have a quick question for you before we move on to you. How successful has it been to implement any of the SDG goals in this region? I know there are a lot of political challenges that don't make it easier on you.
Yeah.
Has it been?
Look, I mean, the implementation and tracking of the SDGs is obviously challenging. There's lots of indicators around the SDGs, and so across the regions there is lots of things that impact that. And, you know, things like COVID and climate have really made it difficult to actually see some of that progress. But there is progress. Okay. There is really strong progress in different parts of the world. Whether it's seeing the nutritional levels going up, it's seeing people into school, water, you know, all of these areas. And so what I would say is across the region, when you do have climate up and down, when you do have conflict issues, it makes it really hard to get that development agenda going forward. And so we need that stability, we need that. But at the same time, that can't hold us back. So this is where innovation's needed, this is where creativity's needed, and this is where we need everyone, everywhere, really to do their bit.
Chef Arthur?
Sorry, just quickly, your question a little earlier about farming, I don't know if it was answered in any way. I think one of the most important things we have to understand is that without people who grow our food, we don't eat. Without farming, we don't see a future. If we don't understand that the people who grow our food should be our heroes, food that comes out of the ground, that comes out of the sea, that comes out of the field, needs to be respected deeply. It shouldn't be cheap. It should be given as a resource to people, not as a commodity. Cheap food doesn't mean that it's good for you. Cheap food actually has a cost down the line somewhere. Farming needs to be seen as cool. Farming needs to be seen as the future. Farming has the capacity to store and lock carbon in the ground. We need to have respect for the people who grow our food, for the animals that feed us, for the fish that we pull out of the sea. But namely, we need to be looking at farming to provide much more of our protein, plant proteins. We need to be eating less meat. We have to be respecting the planet. So farmers are an absolutely vital tool. So chefs are only a conduit for food. It all starts with the farmer. And really what we need to be doing is saying, hey, farmer, meet the person who's eating your food. And there's a chef in the middle who's enabling this. It's a conduit for the nutrition and the support network inside food. But the soil, the farm, the sea, and the land is where farming starts. And there's so many smallholder farmers on this planet, mostly women, that are not being given the respect they deserve. And chefs need to be able to give that narrative too. So farming is absolutely essential for the future of this planet.
So when you say less meat, it's better to go for a plant-based diet or?
Well, no, look, I mean, sustainability, a sustainable diet, and animals are a vital part of this planet. Human beings have developed and their bodies have developed because of animals, but we shouldn't be disrespecting animals. If you're going to eat animal, eat less of it, have much more respect for it, perhaps maybe only a little bit of animal protein once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, and have a lot more respect for animals. People do need animal protein.
Yeah,
sometimes.
okay. Well, I think our time is up, but if Chef Grace would, what do you want us to walk away with today?
You know, I always say that we have to be the change we want to see, and that it's not only about us, it's about each one of you. I think that we need to be aware as consumers and then as chefs that be a conscious consumer, you know, really ask questions, ask the right questions. Where's your food coming from? You know, go to a farmer's market, ask what's in season. Go to your butcher, ask, you know, where's your meat coming from? I think we need to become less numbed about just going to the supermarket and getting our food from anywhere and just not even asking any questions, but really becoming more aware, because you as consumers have the powers. Like, we have this much power, but you guys have every day the power of not only going to the supermarket, but also supporting chefs who are doing things right. If you have the power to go to this restaurant of this person who's not doing things so well, and this person who's doing all the right things, and if you can have the spending power, spend a little more in supporting that chef, that community, that woman, that farmer, do so. I understand it sometimes can be challenging because it's more expensive and less available, but yeah, we definitely have to take that in, that we have to be the change we really want to see.
Thank you. Thank you, Chef Arthur. Thank you, Chef Grace, and thank you, Paul, for all being
Thank you,
with us
guys.
today. Thank you.